Hello, everybody, and welcome to Hash Rate. My guest today is Karia Samaru of XTAO. Hello, Karia. How are you doing, man?
Mark, I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for coming on. Although I did notice that you went on Grant's show before mine. So you've been podcast cheating on me and not sending me flowers.
Yeah.
And frankly,
I'm
what I'm really
you
mad
still
about.
had me.
Yeah, no, I actually haven't watched Grant's show yet. I love Grant. Grant does a great show. And I'm just sad I wasn't able to copy his paper for the prep for this show. So, although you know what I love about Grant though, like he always does that little bit in the beginning where he's like against a black background,
Yes.
like he's in a Queen music video.
Yeah, it's very interesting because you kind of come on and that's all you see, and I do like that. It's a vibe. It's a vibe. Yeah, he's got that down.
He does have his own vibe. Okay, so let's talk about XTAO. So, XTAO. Actually, I'll let you describe it. What is XTAO and what are you doing?
Yeah, so XTAO is a public company that is running a validator, will be running a validator on the Bittensor network and building other infrastructure on the network and accumulating TAO. So we have been working on it since about November last year, and we just launched it, went public on the TSXV in, just the sort of second to last week of July. And so we're excited to have it up and running. And yeah, it's been kind of something that's been in the works for quite some time.
So I know this is not like a completely accurate description because I know there's more to it, but just for people, just to make it simple speak, it's basically MicroStrategy, but for TAO. So MicroStrategy is a treasury company for Bitcoin. You're basically doing the same thing for TAO, correct?
That's correct. I will say in running a validator, like we see a lot of value in building infrastructure to run on the network, in addition to acquiring TAO like a MicroStrategy. That certainly is a key part of the approach. I think it's unique with Bittensor because the network's so early, so you can make a lot of contributions like that can generate revenue for the company and can help grow the network in addition to just buying the asset. So they're really complementary to each other. So MicroStrategy for TAO, there's a couple of other companies out there that are doing this with other networks, like Sol Strategies is a good example where I'd say we're more kind of akin to a Sol Strategies than a pure MicroStrategy because they run and operate validators and are doing other kind of work on the network.
Yeah, I don't think in MicroStrategy there's no sort of there's no analogous run a validator possible because it's Bitcoin, right? I mean, I guess
Correct.
They could run miners, but it's not the same thing. So,
yep.
in the Bittensor universe, for those who don't know, you basically, when you run a validator, you are validating the contest. You're like a judge in the contest of all the miners and all the subnets that your validator is hooked into, and you earn TAO for doing it. So, and the more TAO that is staked to your validator, the more you earn. Right, you're a bigger judge. You're considered to be a bigger judge in the system. So, if you amass a giant amount of TAO, it makes a lot of sense to run a validator and to earn even more TAO. Right. So in fact, if you don't run a validator, you're kind of dumb because you're staking your TAO with somebody else and they're getting the benefit of that. So you might as well run a validator. Right. So that's another revenue opportunity that is not available to MicroStrategy. So, okay. So now you've had this thing up and running or it's been public for, I think it's like 2 weeks now. Yeah. Okay. So not too long. And so far so good. I've actually, so just for full disclosure, I am an investor. I invested before it sort of came out, before it was public. And so I've been watching it and I've noticed it's, from my point of view, it looks like it went up to about like 1.9x NAV. And now it's come back down to like 1.1x NAV. Is that correct? Am I reading that correctly?
I think roughly. I think it's a little bit higher. I think it's, so we raised around at $1 per share, and then the stock traded up to sort of around $2, which is around kind of 2 times NAV, and then it's kind of come back. There's been some pullback in TAO and just just the stock market and things like that. So, but I think that's roughly correct. So it's we hold just over 40,000 TAO, a bunch of cash, and then that's kind of the first marker after our listing.
And But let me ask you a general question,
Sure.
which actually weirdly I get a lot from some of my normie friends about MicroStrategy, people that aren't in crypto at all, but are very much into equities and stocks. They're kind of like, why would I buy that? And why don't I just buy Bitcoin, right? So in your case, why wouldn't I just buy TAO? Why would I want to buy XTAO?
We'll start with MicroStrategy. I think the MicroStrategy response is that, and there's been a bunch of different instruments that Saylor's come out with, even in the last year.
Yeah.
But effectively, he's been able to borrow money at 0% interest over 5 years, and then he's using that to buy Bitcoin. And so, just at a very simple level, if you are a believer in Bitcoin and you want to go out and borrow money to buy Bitcoin, you can't. As an individual, you can't do that for 0% over 5 years, and so the thought process then is I can invest in MicroStrategy and give my money to Michael Saylor to go and do that. And then obviously he's, in addition to just that debt instrument, there's a variety of different instruments that he's used. And so that's sort of the thinking behind it. I think it's similar with TAO, although it's very different also because TAO is so nascent. And it's a lot higher risk, higher volatility than Bitcoin, and so you're going to use different strategies to accumulate TAO. In my opinion, because it's just not as with Bitcoin. You're not going to have a 90% drawdown at this point.
Yeah,
or at least I don't think so. But with some more nascent assets, we've seen multiple cycles. We know how much these assets can draw down, even if there's a lot of long-term value in them. And so, I think there's a lot more risk with some of the high risk, let's say, accumulation strategies. And so that's one difference with TAO. I think another one is that you do have staking yield from TAO and other revenue generating opportunities. We talked about the validator side. And so I think that's sort of another reason why someone would invest in an XTAO versus holding TAO directly is that you would have access to validator revenue. You would have access to, if the management team and the company can execute on raising more capital when the stock trades at a premium to the net asset value, then those purchases of TAO could be accretive to the company and to shareholders, and you can have that sort of virtuous cycle.
Yeah, I mean, so I'll tell you the answer that I've heard, and I've heard it from I have a good friend named Fred Krueger. He was one of the top Wall Street guys, like in the '80s, like in the sort of great and good days. He was there. Right. So, and he's a Stanford PhD, so, not a dummy. And he basically, I follow
him closely. I love
him.
His
okay.
Content.
So I wasn't sure if you know who he was.
For sure.
So Krugs tells me, he's like, look, Mark, there's a lot of people out there that just like owning equities, right? Like they don't have a Ledger wallet in their sock drawer, right? They don't want to learn how to custody their own TAO or Bitcoin or whatever. They just want to go through Charles Schwab and own whatever the hell they own. And they want all their taxes figured out for them. So that's sort of reason one. Reason two is because if you are, there's a lot of funds with their charters, just they don't allow them to buy crypto, right? So their charters say we're going to invest in equities. So therefore, the only thing they can buy are equities. So if you have the correct MicroStrategy puts things into the right form factor for their fund to even be able to invest. And while it's true that owning raw Bitcoin, you'd probably get a bigger multiple. If you own the stock, you at least get a part of that multiple, and you don't have the option to own the raw coins,
right?
So you at least get something, right? And then the third reason is that there's a lot of people overseas for whom it is actually illegal to own American ETFs, so they can't own like the Grayscale or the BlackRock ETFs for Bitcoin. Because they're in England, they just aren't legally allowed to own it. So if it's a stock, however, if it's an equity, they can own it. So that's sort of the third big reason. And I think you brought up a fourth great reason, which is TAO is just weird and new, and people don't even know where to buy it. Like it's kind of a mystery to figure out. Like, where is it on Coinbase? And then actually, I just had someone I know sign up on Coinbase, and I forgot how painful it is to sign up and wait for the account to mature enough to give them, so you can actually buy a lot of stuff like you can't buy a lot of it right off the bat, right? They just don't let you. And then getting it out of there is like another whole thing where you got to upload your license and it takes 5 days and there are all these delays. So it's just kind of, it's harder than it sounds, right? So yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's, and I didn't know about that ETF point. That's a really interesting one. But the first point I think is right on the nose. It's whether it's funds that, and we had a lot of investors that couldn't hold TAO directly that participated in XTAO, and I think that's there for sure. And then even funds aside, even for retail investors, there are just people that, like to your point, don't know how to hold crypto, don't want to hold crypto. And so being able to invest through an equity is just a lot easier. It reminds me of this kind of dating myself here, but 2017, 2018, the first Bitcoin miners going public, and how that just opened crypto and Bitcoin to such a brand new audience. And it's people that, have an interest in a high growth asset, but just never want to actually hold it directly. And, some of those funds that or retail investors that bought into like Hive and Hut 8, some of those early Bitcoin mining companies probably still don't hold any Bitcoin directly. They just get their exposure through that or through MicroStrategy now. So, just another avenue for exposure.
Yeah, I mean, because your choice, you basically got two choices if you hold the raw asset, right? One is leave it up on Coinbase. You can do that. But as we all know, not your keys, not your coin. If it's up on an exchange, you could get Mt. Goxed. Now, you're probably not going to get Mt. Goxed, up on Coinbase, but you never know. They could lock
you
your
never
account.
know. You never know.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been so many. I'm based in Vancouver, and I mean, over the years, there's just been so many. Unfortunately, there's been so many Canadian exchanges that have had these massive like fraud, blow up, all this stuff. And then you think everything's sort of cleared out of that. And then in the last cycle, it's FTX, and you're like, oh, this is like this is the safest, best exchange to use. And then
poof, off it goes.
Poof,
right.
Gone.
You guys had Quadriga famously Quadriga.
Exactly.
Yeah. That was
Quadriga. Yeah. So, I remember actually I made maybe my first Bitcoin purchase, or maybe it was my second one through Quadriga. And I remember trying to withdraw to a cold wallet, and it was taking weeks and weeks. And then I finally got the phone number of the founder, and got on the phone with him. He's like, I'm, he's like, I can't remember what it was. He's like, I'm on a plane back from Israel or from India or something like that. And he's like, I'll get to it as soon as I can. And it was just the most bizarre phone call. And then the withdrawal got processed, which was great. So I got my crypto out of there. But
thank God.
Definitely. Yeah. No, I know not so many, a lot of people weren't quite as fortunate. So
I got my shit out of Gox within about a week before it got hit.
Wow.
Yeah, so I got really lucky. So that was
where I got my
first Bitcoin. I'd gotten some of it out already, but I still had some. I still like a couple up there, so I can't remember exactly.
Was that just lucky timing, or
totally lucky timing? I was just. Amazing. I did have a weird feeling about it. I was kind of like, I remember thinking, I don't really have a lot of control here of what happens, and it's in Japan. Like that was the thing that weirded me out. It's like I had just had like what I was really afraid of is that like the Japanese government might like show up on the front door and just decide it's illegal for whatever reason, right? And I just didn't feel like I felt like it was on wobbly ground. I couldn't really tell you why, and so I was just like, you know what, I just better get it out of there, just be safe. And so thank God I did, because like a week later, Mt. Gox didn't exist anymore, right? So if you're going to own coin, your choice is to leave it up on an exchange, or to figure out how to use a Ledger wallet or some local wallet. Which that stuff is, even though it's gotten a lot easier, and I think Ledger's done a really great job, especially with their sort of latest products. The Flex and the whatever the other one is.
Yeah, I love the Flex.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It is a quantum leap up from the stuff they were doing before. So, but even the Flex, even as great as it is still too hard, I think, for a lot of people. There's still a lot of people. They're still scared by it, right? So, and they don't totally understand how it works. So I think that option is just not available to a lot of people, I think. So agreed for sure. And people may just not, because I think I have a bunch of friends that are believers in crypto and Bitcoin and TAO, but they just still feel more comfortable
holding on an exchange because they don't want to have to deal with the ledger. You send them the instructions and walk them through, and it's just the risk of kind of owning it yourself. And then, okay, well, you can store this in your bank safety deposit box, or you can split it up. There's obviously lots of different ways to do it. And they're just like, no, I'm just going to, Coinbase seems safe enough. I'm good with that.
Yeah, right. It feels like a bank to them, right?
Yeah.
Right. And to us, it feels horrific. It feels like, oh my God, it's like Mt. Gox, right? Like I just feel really tense. Even when I do a trade, I'm like, I can't wait to get my stuff off the exchange because I'm just nervous. While it's up there, right?
Something could happen. Yeah. And that's even with reputable exchanges. And I'm sure you like me have used some of the not so reputable exchanges where you're just,
I've used them all.
That true. Yeah. You've used them all. Yeah. And this is kind of, I think something that is positive on the exchange side is, there is better regulation that has come into place in a lot of, at least in Canada and in the US. And so I think there is better oversight because of some of these massive issues that have happened with Quadriga and, Mt. Gox and so on and so forth. So I do think it's got better. I know in Canada, for example, the exchange regulations are so stringent, and I just don't see any ways that customer assets could have a Mt. Gox couldn't happen, for example. So I think it's getting better, at least in that regard.
Yeah. Now you are an expert on this particular subject because you sold, I guess it was Canada's largest exchange to Robinhood, within the past year or so. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I'm the founder and former CEO of WonderFi, which we grew to the largest exchange in Canada. It's in the process of being acquired by Robinhood. So they announced the acquisition, I think in end of May, and still, going through regulatory approvals and such. But yeah, that's definitely an area that I'm very, intimately familiar with. I had started out, my background's actually as a securities lawyer. That's how I got into crypto.
Oh, wow.
Initially, and had started working with, the first startup I ever joined was doing ICO advisory. It was called First Coin Capital. And based in Vancouver, and we were building a token issuance platform, and then kind of working with different companies that were trying to figure out how to use tokens in their strategy during that huge boom. And then Galaxy Digital acquired this startup. And then that was kind of my first exposure to crypto public companies, because Galaxy went public, and through that just got exposed to a lot of different, mostly regulated products. I think probably just because of my background, and worked with a bunch of exchanges, and then decided to try and build that myself and with a new team that we put together around WonderFi. And really excited to see what that's grown into. When I was running it, we had Canada on lock, and then we were looking at, okay, how do we expand into the US? How do we expand into Australia? How do we expand into these other markets, UK? And I think at the same time, Canada was, I have a lot of thoughts about Canada from a, business, tax, crypto standpoint. None of them are very positive. And what was happening was Canada was just making the regulation harder and harder in the crypto space. And so I think that made it so companies like Robinhood were, who were looking at entering into the Canadian market, were thinking, okay, maybe this is a better way to, enter through acquisition instead of trying to build something on our own. Yeah,
it makes total sense. And I think it has been kind of interesting for me to watch Robinhood, go from being a stock company to really basically being a crypto exchange, right? In a lot of ways, that's what it looked like. I mean, I'm not a user of it, so just sort of looking at it from the outside. I know Jason Calacanis is an investor, so I sort of, it's sort of on my mind a little bit, because I know it's one of his big wins. So I do watch it, and it does seem to me that it's pretty much morphed into largely, I don't know how much revenue they get from crypto versus stocks, but they clearly view crypto as the growth vector. Yes, without a doubt. So
yeah. Which is really, and I think they're putting their money where their mouth is, obviously, with these acquisitions. I think they're acquiring another exchange in Europe, crypto exchange in Europe, and then the tokenized equities they've launched, which is private company stocks like OpenAI that you can buy through Robinhood, which is really cool. And then they're building their own layer 2, and it's really they're kind of going all in, it seems like, on this. And then I think it's amazing as well, because with some of these acquisitions, the crypto users are then going to, I would assume, I don't know personally, but I assume are going to get access to like other Robinhood products. Like it's going to be the full suite of products. And I think that as far as my user experience is considered, I think Robinhood is like the best stock trading app as far as from like a mass consumer standpoint. I think they've just done such an incredible job. So it's cool to see that kind of bridging out into different areas like crypto.
Yeah, UI matters, man, and the experience matters like a lot. And I think the sort of Charles Schwab experience versus the Robinhood experience is like night and day, right? So
yes,
yeah, I would agree with you. And I think we in the TAO universe currently suffer from worse than the Charles Schwab experience.
Yes,
right. Like it's very, very, very difficult to sort of figure out subnets, how to get into them, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Until kind of this last week, I looked at what Sturdy put out with their base, integration, where you can just use your MetaMask wallet and Tether and whatever and buy subnets. That looks amazing, and it's the first thing that I've seen that looks amazing. How would you characterize that UI side of our universe? And do you agree?
Yeah, I generally agree with you. I think there's a lot of smart people working on solutions like that, like what Sturdy has done, and that is encouraging to me. But it's still, and this is the comment on that product, because I think it's
Sure.
great. Like anything that can provide access to subnet tokens without too much friction is just going to be of a lot of value. But I still think it's really early. I think that even just the UI and UX aside, I think even just the concept of alpha tokens has so much nuance to it that we take for granted. Well, I certainly don't. Maybe you don't either. But I think, you talk to people that are deep in the ecosystem, and there's all these concepts that are just second nature to people. And at the same time, it's brand new, right? Like, yes, there are similar things that have been launched on other networks, but there's a lot of unique things about DTAO, a lot of unique things about DTAO and alpha tokens that are still being understood, like yet to be understood, and still being developed, obviously. So I think that, to me, before the UX, it's really understanding what is an alpha token? Why? Okay, if I am a believer in TAO and I invest in TAO, why would I now put it into an alpha token? And I think that is almost a level that's skipped over in the ecosystem right now, because it's the people that are investing in alpha are so deep, I think, at least from my vantage point, like are so deep in it that they know all the ins and outs. But I think being able to get alpha to a point where non-crypto people can invest in it and look at it like a startup investment is where, hopefully where things are going.
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of nuance to alpha tokens. I mean, just the fact that, there's so many weird things with Bittensor, right? So, the fact that the exchange, like the major exchange for alpha tokens and the liquidity pools, are baked directly into the Bittensor chain. Like the Uniswap is inside the Ethereum, right? It's one thing, right? Like that's weird and new, right? We've never seen that before, right? And the fact that, when a new subnet is born, it just gushes liquidity. It just emits new tokens in the form of subnet tokens and TAO directly into the liquidity pool. And those ratios change based on whether the sum of subnet tokens equals 1 or it's higher or lower, right? Like the emission schedule completely changes depending on that, right? Understanding how all these things interact is a very deep, it's a very deep topic, the whole, all of DTAO, but that's great because it creates information asymmetry, which, and also liquidity has a hard time getting into subnets up until this sturdy thing. It's the first thing I've seen where it's easy for liquidity getting in, but most people still don't know about that yet, even though it exists. They just don't know that it's there, right? So it's going to be, I don't know, 3 to 6 months before people figured out that it exists and how to use it, maybe. So I think, so we're in this weird period where you have something like Subnet 33, Ready AI, with a total market cap on circulating supply of like somewhere between 10 and 20 million last time I checked. Total market cap. And it's the Bittensor version of Scale.ai, which was recently acquired by Facebook for 28 billion. So massive delta. You have two companies basically doing the same thing. Granted, Ready AI is smaller, but Ready AI has Aitan Albaz as the CTO who co-founded AdSense and sold it to Google. So like very, very smart brains right in there. So like it should be worth more than 10 to 20 million, I think. That's my opinion. Agree. Right?
Yeah,
it feels like reasonable.
It sort of feels like, I don't know if you agree with this or not, but that's such a good example. And I feel like there's, dozens of other subnet examples like that. Or maybe not dozens, but there are numerous other subnet, super high quality subnet examples like that have these centralized, comparison points. And I think that my thinking is, again, being in Bittensor, DTAO launched in February. It feels like it's been years, but I think for people that are a bit more, I would say neutral, where they're just trying to evaluate the opportunity, it is very early because DTAO is so new. And so to me, I think amongst all the other things that are unfolding with DTAO, I think just the sheer amount of time that it has been around, it's like not a tried and tested concept, is a barrier to seeing the actual, valuations that you and I would think maybe Ready AI should be at right now. Like, I think that is a barrier because you're only getting kind of the hardcore believers that are participating, and it's going to take time. Like, Bittensor has been around for many years, and it's obviously just like growing a more dedicated following, but DTAO is new. So I think we, again, lose sight of that pretty quickly.
Yeah, I mean, so I think there's three problems in my view. There's really three problems. One is, look, there's no easy on ramp for new money to get into the system, right? Into the subnet system. I'm not talking about TAO itself. TAO is on several exchanges. People can find that easily enough, but to get into subnet tokens, it's extremely hard. You have to basically know how to work a bunch of things that most people, even crypto people, don't know how to work. Number two. Understanding what the subnets are. So there's a lot of education. There's a lot of it's brainiac stuff, right? Like it's very sort of like what is Subnet 3 Templar, right? Like, oh, it's decentralized trading. Well, what the fuck is that, right? Like versus this is Fartcoin, right? Like the meme coins. Like it's a very easy thing to put into people's heads, right?
True.
Whereas decentralized trading, and basically what that means is, Elon's got this Colossus thing, which has 200, I think, thousand GPUs in it. Templar is let's do that, but let's do it with a SETI at home kind of thing where, anybody out there that's got GPU can join the network of decentralized trading and earn some TAO and earn some Subnet 3 Subnet tokens in exchange for being part of our decentralized Colossus. And in aggregate, there's about 20,000 GPU, not all in Templar, but just in all of Bittensor. So all of Bittensor has incentivized about 1/10, somewhere between 1/10 and 1/20th, the GPU that it cost Elon to go buy, right?
Right.
Just through incentivization alignment. So and Bittensor is like a little tiny baby, little nothing, compared to all the other coins, right? So oh my God, just wait till it gets at scale, right? So it tells me. So anyway, getting back to my main point, which was the three barriers. So one of them is understanding what these subnets are. And then the third one escapes my mind. I had a really good point, but I can't remember what it is. But anyway, there's two really big ones. And I think, I think we're on our way to solving those, but we're not there yet. And it's, right. And then I made that point right. Never mind. So I'm confusing myself now. So But I do think that that it's an education and an access issue primarily.
Yeah.
But I think we're on our way to solving some of those things. It's just going to be another 6 months, maybe to a year.
Yeah. And I think you're going to see more interesting products come out that help to solve that education piece. Because go ahead.
Sorry, I did think of my third point. My third
Nice.
point was that the way Bittensor works is because it's emitting tokens into the liquidity pools, right? There's dilution, which is occurring every block, every day, every month, right? And it's if you buy a subnet token, you're basically, because of the emissions and kind of where we are right now on the schedule, you're getting diluted by about 0.5% of overall supply every single day. Right. So that's fairly significant dilution, right? So it's like, what is that, 15% a month ish? So, now that's decaying rapidly. So like next month, it'll be like 7% or something like that. But you're still getting, your head's getting dumped on kind of more or less continuously at the moment. And that'll calm down over time. But that's like a new dynamic that most token investors are not really used to.
Familiar with. Yeah, for sure. I think that's right. And I think there's also, I guess this is a dynamic that token investors are used to, but I think the way that Bittensor works around really miners being kind of the lifeblood of the ecosystem and having all these different groups of miners, individuals, collectives, all of that have specific expertise for these different subnets in whatever the subnet's focused on, but then also like differing incentives and differing kind of views on, whether they want to hold TAO, whether they want to hold the alpha, like long-term, short-term. I think that, again, that's not unique to Bittensor. I think that's the same for Bitcoin miners, for example. Are they selling the token as it gets emitted, or as it gets generated? But I think that creates a lot. There's so many of these dynamics that are playing in to subnets, and they're different on every subnet. I think that's the thing. There's just an overload. It's no longer how many Bitcoin are being sold, every block that's mined. It's now you have 128 of those. And then you have like the underlying token as well. And it's so complex. And I'm sure you've seen, or maybe have these yourself, but there's so many different models people have built around alpha tokens, and some of them are infinitely complex. And, I still think probably don't capture all of the different components that are at play.
Yeah, no, I do agree with you. It's pretty complex. So let's talk about you for a second. You decided after WonderFi to do this, first of all, to do TAO, to get involved with the Bittensor ecosystem just in general. And then you decided to do this, to do XTAO. So tell me what made you decide to choose TAO as your sort of focus, and then why XTAO? Of all the things you could have done in Bittensor, why didn't you start a subnet? Why didn't you do other things, right? Why did you do XTAO?
Yeah. So I was planning to take a bit of time off after WonderFi, and then I think probably about a month in, one of my friends had been telling me about TAO, every week, just sending me more stuff, read this. And it was to the point where I was just like, I don't want to look at this at all. And then I finally looked at it and read a couple of early kind of papers, or it wasn't even the white paper at this point. It was just like some analysis that I think a couple different funds had put out. And I was like, okay, this is really interesting. And then I started mining, and just to see hey, how does this actually work? And then I think it was about 5 days had gone by, and I had slept like a collective, 5 hours or something like that. And I was just, mining successfully on some subnets and then getting completely wrecked on others. And just honestly, I would say it was that week where I thought, okay. And I was learning obviously more about Bittensor at the time, as I was mining, but I just thought, this is crazy that, I could just my plan was to just be relaxing and taking time off. And I have just spent a week straight because of this incentive mechanism. And if this works, this is really going to work. So that was kind of that was the moment of clarity for me. And then after all my miners got deregistered, I started to look at other ways I could build in the ecosystem, because there was a bunch of price action, which then I think meant a lot more miners came to the network. And so then, I'm not an engineer. So I was able to be competitive like when I first got in, and then pretty quickly that was no longer the case. And so, yeah, I got Tau pilled, I would say within probably a 2-week period. And then I actually did start by building a subnet. So I co-founded Bitmind, the deepfake detection subnet, with Ken, right, who I think you know.
Yep.
So yeah, I got connected with Ken through the same friend who introduced me to Tau, and we just really kind of hit it off and decided, hey, let's get something going here. So started building that, and then I'd say the more ingrained and the more that I started to learn about Bittensor, the more I decided this is what I'm going to spend the next 10 years on. And it did remind me, I know this is probably a tired story because so many people have this same experience, but I think it's a very real one, which is it's the first thing that got me as excited as when I first found Bitcoin. And it had, I think, a lot of parallels that I think apply into Tau. And, it's this, huge problem. You have philosophical alignment with it, and you have a network that's active and growing. And so, yes, it's nascent and it's still early, but if decentralized AI is achieved in a meaningful way, it'll be through Bittensor. And I think that, I'm obviously betting my kind of stake that, that it will be. So, so just, built the subnet, kind of kept growing. And then, I'll pause there for a second, but that's kind of the background of getting into Bittensor.
Yeah, that was a great story. So thank you. Actually, I fully enjoyed that. So thank you for that. Like you, it's definitely the thing that's impressed me the most since Bitcoin, right? And I remember when Ethereum came along, that also seemed impressive. However, sort of the ICO phase and then the later DeFi phase, looking back now, there was so much kind of hoopla energy, like almost like meme coin energy, right? And I would say 80% of the projects were complexity theater, right? And you sort of felt that. You were like, there's a lot of really bad things here. And it was like, we're a decentralized, bank for the future of money, blah, blah. Like it was all like the same kind of bullshit, right? But on the other hand, there was really great stuff in there. There was the invention of Compound and Aave and Uniswap, right? Those were incredible inventions. And decentralized finance absolutely is a thing, right? So there were a lot of really good things. And of course, the invention of stable coins, right? Like there were some really great inventions that came out of the DeFi era in particular, as well as the ICO phase. There was some great stuff in there too. But I would say sort of generously, 10% of it was good. Right? Maybe 90% of it was mediocre or just shit, right? I would say the opposite is true in Bittensor. I would say it's like 80%. You can argue like how good those things are, but it's 80% pretty good stuff. Maybe 20% just awesome stuff. Maybe even 30%, right? And I would say it's like 20 or 10% bullshit, right? Like there's a very low amount of garbage in here. And I've never seen anything like that, ever.
Yeah. And I feel like it's going back to the mining experience, it's the free market structure of this, where it's like, if you're a shitty miner, like you will no longer be a miner, like you're gone. And, being a subnet owner through like pre-DTAO, post-DTAO, both of those versions, like and obviously DTAO has accelerated that a lot, where, subnets really need to, find meaningful revenue and really need to validate what they're building. But even pre-DTAO, I think that there was just so much pressure around like building something that is real, that has a lot of value and has a lot of growth potential. And so I just think that structure doesn't allow for a lot of hiding. And with all of the complexity around DTAO and all the challenges in building adoption around that, I think it is clearly a major step in the right direction for making sure that everybody on the network is providing value.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think I attended a novelty search, which is a Discord. For those who don't know, it's a Discord show run by Const, who's the guy who he's one of the two founders of Bittensor, and he did a show on basically like the state of the union of DTAO, right? Which I really appreciated because I hadn't. I mean, we sort of heard obliquely from him here and there, but never really sort of let's just sort of analyze everything and talk openly about it in a town hall forum like he did just last week on Thursday. And what I sort of my takeaway from that was that sort of the first year of DTAO is boot up phase, and you should look at the price action. You should look at the dilution. You should look at everything as like, look, none of this is the way it's supposed to be in the end state. This is just supposed to defeat whales from coming in and gobbling up all the tokens of the best subnets before normies get a chance to even have anything, right? And I think it's been very successful at fair launching it, right? It's defeated fuckery quite well, better than kind of anything, right? And so, by year 2, so that would be February of 2026, we should start seeing, kind of the real price action, and any dilution that you suffered from emissions over the first year should be roughly offset by the APY that the system, the crazy APY, the 80-90% APY that the system is giving you in emissions for holding alpha tokens, right? And that's why it's throwing off such crazy emissions in part, right? It's building up the liquidity while rewarding you for holding the token. It just, as you're watching the price go down, you're like, oh my God, I'm getting killed, but you're really not, because you're after a year, it'll all even out, more or less. So that was sort of what I got out of that. So I thought that was a pretty good explanation for the current state, why things are the way they are, and where we're going to be in about, at this point, half a year. So
and I feel like the way that he is able to just speak transparently about these things, in, like you said, in an open forum, speaks volumes. And also that mindset is very long term, and I think that's something that has been a big part of so many people early to Bittensor getting bought in, is just how long-term of a vision it is. And it's not this sort of like short-term extractive group that has created this to try and make a trade, right? Like, it's very clear through Const and through other, like Allah, other people that were early into Bittensor. I think that's to me, that was also a big selling point, was just learning more about who launched it, how it was launched, and the mechanics around that. Because, you and I both go back, well, and you like far before the first ICO wave, it sounds like, if you were holding crypto on Mt. Gox. But it's like, there's just so, I would say probably 90%, maybe that's higher, maybe that's low, but 90% of crypto projects do have very extractive structures that kind of follow this, like, raise a bunch of rounds, do a token launch, and then there's just liquidity for the founders. And so I think that seeing something done with a lot more integrity, I think is attractive. It makes you more confident in kind of, putting your time and energy and money into it.
It's slow and sober, which is the way Bitcoin was as well. I mean, Bitcoin took years to boot up, really. I mean, right. So so slow and sober feels like the right way. If you're building something long term, that you do intend to be big, but it's just, it's not going to be big now. It's because, the alternative is, we could be virtuals, right?
Yes.
Where we have this like giant run up to $5 billion and then down to zero, right? That's the alternate universe. But that's like all it's going to ever do. It'll never come back from that, right? So once you sort of burn a lot of people like that, they never, ever, ever come back, and they don't ever trust you again. So you had your 5 billion in your 5 minutes. Now you're done. Or you could be $1 trillion.
I think you need to clip this part of the podcast, what you just said, and then whenever somebody on X is complaining about TAO price action, you just like paste this clip in there.
Read the sign, right? Like, you like went all there with like my own read the sign, right? I mean that's where, if you don't like the price, okay, we could do that. We could have done that, right? And then it would all be over, and that would be it. Or we can do something slow and sober that goes up to $1 trillion, maybe $2 trillion in value I don't, will it do that? I don't know, but I think it's possible. I think with this approach, it is within the realm of possibility.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And it's clear, as you're saying that, the other thing that becomes clear is the objective with Bittensor, from what I, have heard from Jake or, mostly from him, it was never, build a $10 trillion, company network. It was, build a resilient, open AI network, basically. And so it's, the price of the value kind of comes with that, but it's not in like such a kind of quantitative fashion. Like it's really about the mechanics of the network and all of these details that he's obviously thought so deeply about.
Yeah, no, he's, by the way, for those who don't know, Jake is Const. They're the same person. So just FYI. Okay. So let's talk about a successful subnet, like the recipe for it. I don't think we totally know yet. I think there've been some trends. But the question is basically like, we have not yet had a giant, massively successful breakout subnet, however, some of them actually have very large amounts of usage. And some of them have had some stunning metrics. Like, for example, Bitmind, the one that you co-started, right, with Ken, is now the world's best deepfake detection for images, right? It beats everything else on Earth, right? Which that's amazing. And there are other subnets that have similar metrics. But we haven't had a subnet that's gone to like $1 billion in value yet for lots of reasons, some of them which we just discussed. And does a subnet that breaks out, what does it look like? What are its characteristics? Is it making revenue to buy back alpha tokens? Does it have to do that, or can it just sort of subsist off of emissions, like the PBS model, right? Where you're like, I don't really give a shit if I'm profitable. I'm just subsisting off of emissions. You might laugh, but that's exactly what Bitcoin miners do, right?
Yeah,
it's literally
for sure.
Exactly the same, right? So it's not like it's completely insane, right?
It's not out of the question for sure.
It's not out of the question, right? So what are your thoughts on what makes a successful subnet so far as we understand it to date?
I guess the way that I think about it is for just at a very simplistic level, the subnets need to create valuable outputs that people want to use and pay for, or pay for, whether that's through more of like a freemium model, or whether it is like more of a commercial enterprise type of SaaS setup. But it's basically needs to create something of value. And so I think that the example that you brought up with some of the subnets, I think Bitmind was one of them, that have created models that are outperforming centralized competitors. To me, that's the first big metric is, can this network and this subnetwork build something that is, high performing? And so I think we're seeing the answer to that is yes. There's multiple subnets that are meeting or exceeding those benchmarks. And then the second part is, okay, now that we've built this great sort of product, how can we get people to use it? And I think that's really the kind of chasm that is being crossed or has yet to be crossed. And I think will create a lot of value within the subnets because, I don't know what the timeline is for that. I think it's different, obviously for each subnet, but I think really, to me, it's kind of similar to the price action conversation that we had earlier, where if you can have a subnet that's self-sustaining and continues to iterate and build stronger models, then maybe it's less, there's less pressure around creating external revenue now, because this network will take time to grow, et cetera. So, I don't know, like initially I was very much like, subnets need to make revenue now, like it has to be yesterday. And now I think I'm maybe in a bit more of a balanced approach where I think, a lot of the subnet teams, I think are doing well, based off of missions, and they're clearly improving the models and the products that that are being generated on the subnet. And maybe it's, maybe the catalyst is one subnet, getting mass adoption, and then more people look at Bittensor. Maybe it's more Bittensor price action more generally. Like, I don't really know what that next step is, but I think to me those are kind of the two crucial pieces for subnets.
Yeah, no, I'm still debating it. I mean, obviously, I'm still debating it in my own head, right? So I don't think we know. I think where I'm at is we don't know. The one trend I see is, it seems to be the prevalent trend right now, is that subnets are largely saying we're going to generate revenue, and all of that revenue or a significant portion of that revenue is going to go back to buying alpha tokens. Right, which is not just charity, because the other thing I quiz a lot of the subnets on, they come on hash rate. So I'm like, all right, so like, look me in the eye. Let's like have a real conversation about this. Once you get big, why don't you just like shit can your subnet and say, fuck that, I don't care about it.
Right.
And just do everything yourself. And what comes back invariably is, oh God, no, I could never do that, because the subnets give me they basically are producing so much GPU and so much product that's so much better and so much more powerful, orders of magnitude, like insane amounts of smarts and GPU and power. I couldn't function. Like, there's no way I can get rid of that subnet. It's integral to what I'm doing, and the buybacks that I'm going to do are a smidgen, like a fraction of what I would have to pay in terms of equipment and salaries to get the same thing. So it's not like it's charity, right? Like, there was a lot of this during the Ethereum ICO days, right? Where it's like, we're going to generate revenue and then we're going to buy back our token off the open market. Right. And maybe we'll do that, maybe we won't, but really it's just charity. We don't really give a shit, right? Like, it's it didn't really work, but I think the economics in the subnets do work based on what I've seen so far. So yeah. So I think that's one dimension.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think it's also exciting to see subnets. I mean, Manifold is the one that I'm thinking about, being able to raise external capital. I think that is just like, I think there's so many different ways to look at Bittensor, but I think if you look at it as, a startup ecosystem, if you buy into that sort of view of it, then I think this is really encouraging. And it's going to be really cool to see what they do with the capital and how they grow it. I think, I have very high conviction around that team, but I think that's probably the start of a wave of, capital coming into subnets directly. We're obviously seeing it we've been seeing it coming into TAO for a long time, and then now into companies like XTAO and, other treasury companies, just more at the TAO top level. But I think more capital coming into the subnets obviously is just going to, I don't know exactly what it looks like, but it's just more capital to play with and to grow their teams with, et cetera.
Yeah, I'm bullish on Targon, which is the product of Manifold as well, Subnet 4. So totally agree with you. That's an amazing team, amazing product. And they're addressing enterprise in an enterprise-friendly way. The trusted execution environments. Yeah. Basically talking to them, those people in their language. So, and they just raised $10 million, $10.5 million. So awesome. And I agree with you. This is a startup ecosystem for sure. These are all AI startups, or digital commodity startups that are mostly AI, not necessarily all AI, but yeah. So agree with you. It's B Combinator.
It's B Combinator. I like it. Yeah. You got to trademark that.
And I'm pretty sure the Y guys would come after. Yeah. Whatever. But yeah, no, I do think that's what this is. The other thing that's pretty interesting is Dippy, right? Like, so part of this is just communicating what these subnets do. But Dippy has been in this sort of companion app space for a while now. They've got 8 million users on iOS, right? And their subnet is sort of now powering their characters. And I think Targon is powering their subnet, right? They're right, it's powering them, right? So you got subnets powering subnets, which is interesting.
Which is the dream. That's the original vision, right? Like this interconnected network, and that's
composability,
so cool.
Like DeFi, right? Like snapping these things together like Lego bricks, right? And all of them, and we're like this Tau Keiretsu, right? Because ultimately, all the subnet tokens are rehypothecated Tau, right? Because you just take Tau to get subnet tokens. So everybody's focused on driving value in the Tau through incentivization alignment. So at every step in this hierarchy, there's incentivization alignment, which is just causing this neutron star to kind of form, right? Which is pretty interesting. So anyway, so getting back to Dippy.
Do you think? Okay, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Let me just finish the point on Dippy. So
Yeah.
Because where I was going with this is a lot of people like this is extremely popular with tweens. Like that's who uses these companion apps, but nobody really knew what it was except if they were a tween, right? On iOS, even I was kind of like, "What the fuck is this shit? I don't care about this." And then Elon did the exact same thing on X with Annie and Valentine, right? Those two AI characters, and all of a sudden it was very sort of visceral, and everybody knew what they were. And I'm like, "Oh, that's what these guys are doing over at Dippy. It's the same thing." Right? It even looks like the same style of art, right? And all of a sudden, now all of a sudden, Dippy's Subnet's taking off like a bat out of hell. The price action is going crazy. So I think centralized AI will help explain these subnets better. Like it'll just benefit all the subnets. So anyway, please continue.
No, I like that. I like that because it's this is the blank, but this is decentralized blank basically, and people can really understand that. I guess this was just more of a thought that I had is. I wonder how much of a barrier, and I mean, I think I know the answer because I have seen it, because I've talked to really talented machine learning engineers, for example, that have a great idea for a Bittensor subnet and they're, a subject matter expert, like they've had success in kind of building that particular space. But then it's such a challenge for them to kind of understand the ins and outs of Bittensor and crypto, I guess, to be frank. So, it's this like scary, intimidating place, but I do feel like there's probably a lot of talent still that, is held back by just the kind of crypto economics and then the complexity of Bittensor in terms of being able to actually build. And maybe it's just pairing them with the right people to be able to launch a subnet, or to mine. But I feel like there's something there that could help onboard more builders into Bittensor. I know there's like some, kind of universal API type of, but that's more stuff that's allowing developers to use things that are built on Bittensor through kind of a universal API. I think this is more, how do you get more people building without necessarily having to understand all of the, because it's a completely separate job role to understand all the tokenomics and things, right?
Yeah, and the AI people don't necessarily understand. That said, there are a lot of sort of legit AI people that are working at
already. For sure.
They're working at Grok. They're working at OpenAI. Then they go home at night and they're mining Bittensor. That just applying their skills and they're earning TAO, right? So there's a lot of people. There's more people doing that than a lot of people realize. I think. So,
for sure.
But that said, you're right. There needs to be. There's also a lot of AI, researchers. Actually, we're not allowed to use that word anymore after last week. AI software engineers that that don't understand the Bittensor side of this. So there needs to be like a Bittensor wrapper, right? It's for those people to just they're like, I don't give a fuck about this. I just want to plug into this, right?
Yeah.
Almost like a treasury company is for TAO, to bring it back
there
to
we
where
go.
we began.
There we go.
We need sort of a similar thing. So,
yes.
Okay, before we go, why don't you tell us, where can people find you online? Where can people go to learn more about XTAO?
Yeah, so xtao.co is our website, and you can find us on X. XTAO HQ is the Twitter handle, and just posting updates about the company there. And as you know, it's publicly traded, so we'll be continuing to grow and build validators, build infrastructure for Bittensor, and acquire more TAO, and look to grow this into one of the largest Bittensor companies. That's the goal with XTAO.
Outstanding. Well, I am not only the Hair Club president, but I'm also an investor. Probably a bad analogy given my head, but anyway, you get the idea. So very enthusiastic about what you're up to, and very happy with the progress so far. So thank you for all your efforts. And that's it. It's all the time we have. My name is Mark Jeffrey. This has been Hash Rate. We'll see you all next time.
Thanks, Mark.